Welcome to the Profitable Public Speaking Podcast. I am your host, Marc Guberti, CEO and founder of the Content Marketing Plaza, bringing you 2 new episodes each week where I and top-level guests teach you how to get on more stages and make a profit from your public speaking. And there are some people who they see the power of public speaking, they see all this potential, but they have a 9-to-5 job. And while there are a lot of people who they do try to get out of that by being an entrepreneur, that's the route a lot of people take. They start with a side hustle. Public speaking is such a valuable way to build your platform, make revenue. It can be a little more challenging because you obviously will be at different locations throughout the year if you are a public speaker. So that's what we'll be focusing on in this episode. How do we go from 9 to 5 to being a public speaker? We'll also talk about how you can have a digital business going from that 9 to 5 transition. So today's guest who joins us today, he is the CEO and founder of #iSocialYou, a data-driven marketing agency which is based in Dallas, Texas. And in the last 10 years, he has launched his own startups and developed digital marketing solutions for several mega brands, SMBs, startups, and agencies. And at his company, he helps brands build the right type of audience and generate leads and revenue using Facebook ads and creative digital strategies as well. He is actively involved in the Dallas community as a startup marketing mentor, advisor, and a keynote speaker. Today's guest for episode 6 of the Profitable Public Speaking Podcast is none other than Ali Mirza. Ali, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Mark, thank you so much for having me. And, I can tell you've done your homework and research on me, so that's awesome.
Ali, thank you so much for coming on the Profitable Public Speaking Podcast. I look forward to diving into how we can make this transition because it's not like 9 to 5 to then becoming an entrepreneur, because public speaking, you could be like over 1,000 miles away from where you live. So there's certainly a lot of different elements if you want to be a public speaker. Definitely very worthwhile though. But before we get into that, I wonder if you could give us the background and share with us what got you into public speaking.
So, Mark, my kind of, story is I was sort of stuck in the 9 to 5 job and wanted to start my own business, which I did. I took the baby step approach to go from my job to starting a digital agency. And one thing I realized, and, as an online influencer and content creator, maybe you can relate that the more people trust us, the more they're willing to do business with us. And that's really because on the service side of things, while building the agency, one thing I realized early on that instead of going to the networking events and exchanging business cards, there's a better way. And the better way is me getting in front of the people and speaking and educating and teaching them something, or AKA public speaking. So that's how I kind of discovered public speaking as a tool to educate people, teach them, and build my own personal brand. And now it directly helps, the business that I'm building.
And public speaking, it's something that really anyone can do to grow their brand because you get in front of the right people. And it's very different to be on that stage for 30 to 45 minutes versus you just handing out business cards to a few people. Getting on that stage definitely puts you in a lot higher demand. And I do want to go right into the 9 to 5 because I feel like there are a bunch of people who they may have that, they may have the 9 to 5, but they still want to be a public speaker. So what's your advice on scheduling these things? Because you know that you could go really far away from home for some of these. And how do you schedule that with a 9 to 5 in there?
Yeah, and I would say do what you can with what you have, but do it right now. So obviously, sometimes there's speaking events happening, at noon or in the morning. And if you have a 9 to 5, you can't do that. So you look for the thing that you're able to do with the restrictions that you have. So look for weekend events. There are a lot of, actually, you might know meetup.com. And that's one of the websites that I looked at in the beginning. And I just searched for, business events. I live in Dallas. So business meetups in Dallas, social media meetups or meetings, networking events in Dallas. And that's how I found them. And then when I started in early days, I was also doing the transition from 9 to 5. So I also had some time restrictions. So I was looking at events that were after 6 p.m. or on Saturday or Sunday. And actually the funny thing is a lot of those events are in those off times. So, to answer your question, that's what I would say, start today. Don't wait until, you quit, you have more time, because you will never have more time, right? So find events, go to sites like meetup.com or Eventbrite, or maybe Facebook groups in your city, and find events that are outside of your working 9 to 5 hours.
I really love that idea, because there are people who they look at the big event. Like, one of the big events in my industry is Social Media Marketing World. And that's, at a specific time of year, it's multiple days, it's in San Diego. But in my case, I'm in New York, and, going that situation, you don't want to go to, 10 of those events in my case in one semester, because then I'm not in any of my classes. So what Ali is saying, this is what I love, is that instead of saying, oh, poor me, I can't go to Social Media Marketing World or whatever event it is for you, look for those meetups, look for those smaller events, so that when you are ready to make that leap out of your 9 to 5, it's not like you're starting from nowhere. It's like you have reel and highlights and testimonials and all of that good stuff if you just look at Meetup and start with what you're able to do based on what your schedule allows.
Yeah. And Mark, one thing actually, you just kind of made me think of something. I haven't personally done it, but I've seen some people do. If they're in 9 to 5 and they see a really cool, CES show in Vegas or other meetup or events come up, they actually go to their boss and pitch them. So they would tell them, hey, here's a cool event or an opportunity that's coming. And if someone from our company goes there and does, public speaking or some kind of networking there, here's 5 ways it can benefit our organization. And by that way, sometimes there are people who are able to convince their boss or their companies to even sponsor their trips. Because keep in mind that your companies, your brands are also looking for ways to represent do representation at those events. So maybe a long shot, but I've seen people do that. They'll go to their boss and just convince them to, pay for their tickets to Social Media Marketing World, because they're able to prove that, hey, by going there, and especially by speaking, by representing our own company there, is the benefit that we're going to get.
That is a really great idea. And then in that kind of a scenario, it's fine for you to be speaking at those places, even if you miss a few days, because you've prearranged it, you're promoting your company. So I think one of the big themes we should get here is be creative with this. Don't think Ali brought a great point up, go to Meetup, but there's certainly a lot of other ways also. I mean, Chamber of Commerces, those are pretty big. And just like word of mouth, I mean, there are just so many ways to make public speaking work. It's just a matter of putting in the work and having the creativity to see another way.
Yeah. And, another thing, I've seen so many people, Mark, they'll cold emails, right? So they'll write emails to the event organizers and be like, hey, I want to come, do a sales presentation. I want to talk about Facebook ads or Instagram marketing or podcasting. But keep in mind, those guys, they probably get a lot of, pitches, the cold emails. So I think the better way is actually first become a part of that community, if possible. If you're in the reach of that event, actually go there, absorb or participate in some of their content, or I call it become a part of the community, and then pitch your, your public speaking, your keynote idea, because then it will be really hard for them to say no. So if possible, that's another kind of pro tip I would throw in there. If possible, go to these events maybe once or twice, talk to people, especially identify the organizer. Because here's the thing, that sometimes you will be able to identify a value that you can directly add to that event. And I remember in my early days, I was going to these social media events, and I noticed that no one was talking about Facebook ads. Everyone was talking about content and graphics and videos and organic reach and things like that. So I told the event organizer, hey, how about I do a presentation on Facebook ads, and that's going to be a huge value add to your audience. And he said, yes, right away.
Yeah, and like that's a really great tip also. I mean, if you come and say, I want to be a motivational speaker, there are so many motivational speakers, but if you present a topic that is important like Facebook ads, but it hasn't been covered yet, that's where you could come in. Like if there's an event that has like 10 people talking about the same thing, what do you think the chances of you being that 11th person talking about the same exact thing? People want a variety of topics as they pick their speakers. So that's a really great insight. That's why it's always good to submit multiple speaking topics when you are submitting to someone, especially if that is an introduction where that person doesn't know you yet. But one of the things going back to the 9-to-5 job is we've thought about a few ways to be creative with it. Like, okay, we're 9 to 5, like, yes, we're not going to act as if we're not at a 9 to 5, but we're still going to make this happen. So when do we get to the point where we eventually take that leap? What was your big moment where you decided, all right, I'm leaping, I'm ready to do this full time?
Yeah. And, personally, Mark, for me, it was baby steps. So what I did in my 9 to 5, my first goal was, can I get one client? So I was side hustling on the nights and the weekends to get that one client. And once I had the one client, my next goal was, can I get 3 clients? And then my next goal was, can I replace my 9 to 5 income? So I took the babies because I was also learning and developing my confidence and telling myself, hey, I can do this. So for me, it was the baby step approach. I quit my 9 to 5 when my side hustle income was, close to, or really, it almost was more than my 9 to 5 job. I know some people, they have a savings of, let's 6 months, and then they just quit, right? Like this, they'll just quit 9 to 5 and then go all into whatever they want to do next. For me, it was more like, baby steps. So I always, that worked for me. But as an advice, when I talk to people, I always tell them, look inside and see like what's driving you. Sometimes you hate your 9 to 5 so much, like you feel like you're trapped in a box, and it might be better that if you quit and just do your own thing, be free, chase your own dream. And sometimes you actually do like your 9 to 5. There are a lot of things that you like about that 9 to 5, but you want to create something on the side. So, and then in those situation, you don't have to quit your 9 to 5. You can do the approach that I took, and baby step, work on the nights if possible, after 6 p.m. or work on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, and then create your side hustle income stream, so to speak. So I always say, look inside and see what's your passion, what's your motivation. You say you want to leave 9 to 5, but why do you want to leave 9 to 5? And then act according to that. Because if something worked for you, it's not going to work for me, and vice versa.
And I like the idea of the side hustle. Like some people, I do want to ask you a certain question, but I just want to provide more context first. One of the things is that you mentioned is that it is weekend work, it is side hustle, it's all these things. The question I do have is just because you're side hustling doesn't mean that your coworkers are side hustling, and like not that many people actually take that path because watching Netflix is easier. So how were you able to do the side hustling even if you perhaps were not surrounded by people at work every day who were on that same path?
Yeah. That's a really good question, Mark. And I think that probably was the biggest challenge. Because in the early days, even though, let's say you start thinking about side hustling or doing something else, but you're still surrounded by the same type of people. So I think for me, it was the once I started going to the networking events or meetups, that kind of gave me the confidence. Because then I was around people who were doing the same stuff that I wanted to do. That kind of showed me, hey, it's possible. I can do it. And here's the people I can touch and feel them. They did it. I can do it. And a perfect example, I create courses on Udemy It's an online education platform. And I found out about Udemy. And then for 1 year, I didn't take any action. Like I didn't do anything. And then there was one event where I sat next to a guy who has some courses on Udemy, and he was making some income, not a lot, but some income. And just by sitting next to that guy and talking to him, it kind of triggered something in me. And within the next 30 days, I had my first course up. So I think there's a huge, when we say you're the average of 5 people, or you act like your environment, I think that's really true. Fast forward today, I have over 80,000 students on Udemy, 36 courses. And if I had not sat next to that one guy and spoke to him for like 20 minutes, I may have not, taken that lead to actually do it. So, but I would say, even though you're surrounded by your coworkers who are not they don't get your passion, they don't get your drive, they don't get what you want to create, that's fine. Don't let that get to your head. Slowly start, meeting people or start going to the events. Get yourself closer to the people who are doing the type of thing that you want to do. And, another good example is even it can happen online because there's so many, content consumption like this, podcast shows. There's so many Facebook groups where you can network with people and, talk to people who are doing something similar. For example, if you want to create an e-commerce business, it's so much easier if I talk to someone who's already doing e-commerce and making, X number of dollars per month. Because then I know, my brain knows, hey, it's possible. Here's a live person who's doing it, and I can do it too.
And I asked that question, like the main idea behind that question was exactly what you mentioned, that Jim Rohn quote that I love to say again and again: you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most of your time with. And I mean, some people, they're in a toxic workplace where not only can they not find the right people there, but they find people who are actively out to sabotage them or actively out to derail them when they hear that, there's a side hustle going on. So I love the idea. Just because they're your coworkers doesn't mean they're ones you have to focus on. You can focus on going to meetups in places where you will find people that share the same values, that have achieved what you want to achieve. So it is certainly about surrounding yourself with the right people. And one of the things that, in addition to the 5 people you're always surrounding yourself with, another big thing for success are your habits. So I'm wondering if you could share with us some of the habits you would consider were very helpful on your journey to being a successful public speaker.
Yeah, looking back, I think, I call them like systems, but the same thing, habits, right? So one of the things that I did like really early on to get clients, a couple of things actually. One was, when we exchange business cards with people, and normally we don't do anything. What I used to do is if I went to an event and exchanged business cards, I would send you an email that night or maybe the next day and tell you, hey, Mark, so nice to meet you at so-and-so event. And by the way, I took a look at your website. And in the early days, I was kind of creating SEO company. So I would tell that prospect, here's 4 things on your website that you can change yourself to really like improve your SEO. So I would not say, hey, work with me or pitch my services, but I'll give them a solution based on our conversation and then leave it like at that. And then if they responded back, which in many cases people did, then I would tell them, hey, by the way, I can do all of this for you. Do you want to grab coffee or do you want to meet? So that habit really, because normally what people do is they'll go to these networking events, exchange business cards, and then comes the pitch. Hey, I'm the website developer, I'm the app developer, I'm the social media agency, the Facebook ads expert. And the other person kind of goes the defensive because everyone is pitching at them from different angles, right? So instead of that, just take give the value without expecting anything back. So I kind of developed a habit of that. And the other thing that or system or habit that really benefited me, whenever I did the keynotes of public speaking, when we get off the stage, there are so many people, they come to us and they're like, hey, it was awesome, right? So I learned so much from your speech or from your keynote. And I would always ask them, I would pick 1 or 2, and I would ask them, hey, what was their biggest takeaway? And they'll say something, so and so. And I would say, hey, by the way, would you mind saying that on a short video for me? And I'll just take my phone out and record them, their comments. So that was also, I got into the habit or system because it's one thing me saying, hey, Mark, I really know, let's say Facebook ads as an example, versus if someone else is like, hey, Ali's the guy for Facebook ads, right? So I took that approach. I made that a habit that every time, if I'm going on a stage, definitely at the end, I'm going to talk to people and see if, if I can identify a couple of people who can say something, on the video for me.
Wow, that's a really awesome tip. I mean, if you've been submitting any pitches for public speaking, or you've seen successful speakers, those testimonials are really important. And I feel like a lot of people, they would leave a testimonial for you. It's just that they forget, life gets busy. So really doing that on the spot, whether it's right on the event, when you see the stage, or just in the lobby, or whatever it is, that video really makes a big difference. And I just want to say it was very refreshing to hear you talk about how you pitch your SEO services. I don't know if this happens to you, but I get like a bunch of cookie cutter emails each day saying like, your website's terrible, it's SEO poor, here, like 20 different things that we can do to help you. And it's like the same 20 or most of them the same for SEO, like on all of these emails. So it's just a breath of fresh air to hear how you pitch your SEO services. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So speaking of your SEO services, and speaking of you being on Udemy, because you did mention you have over 80,000 students there, I'm wondering if you can share with us where else we can find you and just follow you on your journey.
So the brand is isocialu.com. That's my digital agency. And basically I tell people think of us as a fractional CMO. So for businesses, let's say if they don't have a marketing department or a CMO, they come to us and we look at their business. We understand what's the business model, what are they selling, and what's the right strategy, what's the right tool. Should they be on Instagram or Facebook ads? What's the best fit for that business based on the budget that they have? So that's what we do, isocialu.com. And also I'm Ali Mirza on all the social media platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram. These days, and I say these days because it changes a lot, my favorite platform is LinkedIn. So I'm creating a lot of content. LinkedIn is really like evolving. I think in other words, they're copying Facebook. So I'm really active on LinkedIn, but you can reach me on any social media platform. I really love creating content and educating people on my platforms.
Ali, thank you so much for sharing all of your resources with us and all of the great insights throughout our time together. It was such a pleasure to have you on the Profitable Public Speaking podcast.
Thank you for having me, Mark.